the real key to leadership wasn't doing more, but just being present? In today's episode, I'm joined by Kristy Mandour, founder of So to Speak. She shares how high-achieving leaders and entrepreneurs can stop operating on autopilot and start leading with grounded presence, with emotional intelligence and intuitive confidence. We talk about how to move from self-doubt to self-trust, why your body holds all the answers your brain might be overlooking, and how to shift from all the pressure to presence, especially during those tough conversations that us leaders and entrepreneurs often need to have. This conversation is part leadership training, part soul work, and really 100% necessary. I invite you to listen. You're listening to the next episode of the Main Street Success Stories podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Kok. I created this podcast to share others' journeys to help you learn, grow, stay motivated, and know that you are not alone in this game called entrepreneurship. Thanks for joining me, and I invite you to listen in to my conversation with Kristy. Welcome to the Main Street Success Stories podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Kok. I've been a business owner for about 25 years, and now I'm a business coach. I actually turned my first business into a franchise and successfully sold it after owning and operating it for 20 years. I prioritize building a business while also building a life and love working with the creative entrepreneur. I mostly work with emerging business owners who desire growth. They are in their first 5 years of the journey and want a plan that's going to help them succeed for years to come. They're tired of not getting paid enough, feel stuck, and want more for their business and family. If you are a business owner and you're feeling stressed about how to attract more customers, you have a really good sales month, but then you look at your bank account and wonder where the money went. You look at your financial statements, but if you're being honest, you're not really sure what to do with the information. And you just tell yourself, if I work harder, it'll fix all my issues, only to feel exhausted and never see things improve. You're here because you want to build your business, but you also want to build a life that you love. I invite you to learn more about one of my 3 coaching programs designed to help you earn more and stress less. You can choose which option works best for you. Imagine this. You have a clear plan and momentum, and you're gaining more clients every week. Your revenue climbs by 20% or more. You save 5 hours a week because you know exactly where to show up. You're experiencing double-digit growth in your profits. People refer customers to your business because they understand exactly who you help and what you do. If this is you and you desire more, reach out, let's have a conversation, and you can click in the show notes below. Hi, Kristy. It is so nice to see you again and have you on the show today.
Hi, Jen. It's always great to see you.
You know, I've learned so much from you. So first of all, for those that don't know you, tell us about your business and what you do.
Well, ditto. I've also learned much from you. We were very lucky there. So I have a company called So to Speak. It's a communication and public speaking boutique company. And what it does is it works with high-achieving, human-centered, mission-driven leaders who are looking to really transform their leadership voice and their presence. And we do that through many, which we'll get into, traditional and not so traditional ways, so that they, at the end of the day, they really feel like they can have a sense of authority while also maintaining their authenticity.
And I think that's what has been so unique about watching you and listening to your style is you do talk a lot about presence, not pressure. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us have this idea about leadership, that it is more pressure, it's more telling people what to do. And I love your style, so different. What prepared you for this business? What did you used to do? What was your background in?
Yeah, so I have a performing arts and a writing background, always human behavior, was always into psychology, was always into stories and people. And then when I went through the whole thing in New York with writing and acting, I enjoyed that, but it was more of the human behavior side of it and the writing, you know that. So the writing stays. I'm always a writer. And the human behavior piece is I really wanted to do something that I'm doing now. And I was given that opportunity a few years back at a local organization in my hometown in upstate New York. At the time, it was called the Women's Employment and Resource Center. They're all over the country, those that are surviving. And it was to help women transition back into the workforce. So we worked with women across the board. Many were on public assistance. Many were, transitioning back into the workforce after being out of the workforce, raising kids, divorced, widowed, separated, recently released from jail, released from rehab. And we were working with them to not just prep them for job interviews, but really we found out it was really life skills. It was how can we incorporate ways for them to feel confident when maybe they never felt confident in their entire life. And so I had just graduated with a master's in theater education, knowing that I wanted to use it in this way. From having experience of, it really is the same thing. Like when you love an actor, whether it's a movie actor or a theater actor, the reason you love them, if you really think about it, is because they're so present that you can't really tell that they're acting. And that is really what it's about when it comes to using your voice and leading, is how can you get so present that you're not acting? Because when they're so present, they're really not acting. And it's the same thing, the whole fake it till you make it, the whole, imposter syndrome. We'll get into that. But when you feel present in your body, you're able to show up so much more authentically and grounded, and you're out of your head. And so we were showing these women who really thought they signed up for like a Microsoft Excel course.
Right.
They were blown away. We were introducing them to Brene Brown back in oh my gosh, it was probably 15 years ago, if not more, before her TED Talk went viral, and Amy Cuddy with the power poses, and Simon Sinek when, the Start With Why was starting to be big, but it really wasn't yet. And they were going on these interviews and they would come back, and, one woman who had been released from jail, and I was so proud of her because she knew her limitations that were in front of her, and she still showed up, and she was so prepared, and she came back, and I said, so how did it go? And she was like, I was more prepared than he was.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, and I kept hearing variations of that. They started to becoming overqualified for the positions that really they needed to get the foot in the door. That's what led me to have a wonderful conversation with my boss at the time, who she and I are still very close. She's lovely. And say, I think it's time. It was one of the hardest decisions I ever made. Anybody who loves the boss and feels connected with them, and then there's something bigger calling. I said it, and she, there were tears, there were blessings, all of the things. And So to Speak has gone through many iterations, but that was when So to Speak's seed was first planted, because I said, I need to get into the decision makers and bring these tools and these practices to the top, because we all know it ripples down. It can't start at the bottom, because then there's going to be even more of a power struggle. People are subconsciously going to feel more threatened. It's just how it goes. So that's where, So to Speak, really the seed was first planted. Yeah.
What a brilliant experience for you. And I just love the impact that you made. But I love how at some point you felt that calling.
Mm-hmm.
You felt that deep in your soul that there was more for you to offer. And boy, have you. And I've seen your work. I know the different leaders you've worked with, and I've seen their impact. And so take us through your approach, because your approach is so different than typical leadership coaching. Typical leadership coaching is more about the behavior styles of the person and the communication. We're comfortable with like the disc where you learn all the different, how do you communicate and how should you talk to somebody? You go deeper than that. So take us through your process.
Yeah. And I feel like they all have their place, right? There's DISC, there's Myers-Briggs, there's Strength Finders, there's all of those. My process is more internal. So a lot of those are like external self-awareness. That's more of the cognitive self-awareness, knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, what you're good at, whether you're an early bird or a night owl. I mean, that's all external cognitive self-awareness. What we do is embodied self-awareness. So embodied self-awareness is really getting into the senses. It's beyond the emotions, even though emotional intelligence is a specialty of mine. It's really discerning between your emotions. Someone might say, I'm feeling anxious. Embodied self-awareness is, how do you know that? Well, I just know. Okay. And then we just, and I'll tell you, Jen, it took me so long, and I do thank my acting classes for this, to get safe in my body, to feel okay, to not rush to the answer for the person, and to actually say, okay, let's sit and see where it shows up. And I now feel that one of the greatest gifts I've learned is how to hold space in a way that feels whole and genuine, and there's no rush and there's no pressure, and allows the person to start. I really look at it like the work I do is bringing the person back to trusting themselves. At the end of the day, if you strip it all down and it's like simplify, it's how can you go from self-doubt to self-trust? So then we get into, well, I sense it because my heart is getting tighter. Okay, so now we're into embodied self-awareness. My armpits are sweaty. I feel my head feels buzzy or fuzzy. That's weird. I never know. Great. So now you're literally out of your head and you're into your body. And in the moments while you're actually sharing where the anxiety is, it's so counterintuitive. You're actually decreasing your anxiety because you're decreasing your emotional regulative state.
Wow. So when a leader can get in tuned to these embodiments, these thoughts, these feelings before they speak to one of their staff members or employees, and trusting themselves, that to me was so impactful. Trusting themselves to be a good leader. So you're kind of helping them be intuitive and figure out what they need to do in the moment. Like, once again, be present.
Yeah. Well, and we also, when we're getting lighter about it, because it is important to have like a bit of a levity to it, I always say that we're de-wooing intuition. Like, intuition is not, it can be. You can absolutely take that road. I work with very high achieving left brain leaders who are so maxed out with masculine energy, that doing energy, the striving, and the majority of them are parents. I work with a ton of millennials. I work with entrepreneurs who are they're doing, and they're wearing tons of hats. And some of them are in the sandwich generation. They're taking care of parents. Their masculine energy is maxed out. And when I say masculine energy, it's not gender associated. It's just an energy we all have. We all have masculine and feminine. And masculine is the doing, and it's needed. But now our feminine energy is atrophying. That sense of listening in, the sense of daydreaming, that sense of our intuition coming up, the sense of creating for the sake of creating, not to create out of a sense of getting likes or more strategy.
Right.
And it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of unprogramming, because we've been programmed to be doers since the Industrial Revolution. I mean, that's what it was for. It was like, screw the arts, let's go heavy left brain. We were being programmed before AI came around to be almost like robots, to just assembly line, get things through. And so when we're not in that speed, of course we're going to feel like failures. I mean, we're programmed. So I don't look at it as cynical. I look at it as skeptical of the programming, and it needs to be changed. And I take my work very seriously and also very lightly. So I love when I'm working with specifically women. I have some men clients too, but it's mainly women who come and they just take this exhale that's been in them for so long. And then once we move through that, the different approach that you were referencing is that we really focus on energetics. We focus on emotional intelligence. And when I say energetics, I don't just mean when you have high energy in the morning and then you crash in the afternoon. It's also what's happening in your body when you're feeling anxious, what's happening in your body when you're feeling sad, what's happening in your body when you're feeling angry. And a lot of women have like pushed that one down so much that it's like, no, let's get angry for a minute, not to act on it, just to allow it to come and flow through. So we work on a lot of energetic practices so it doesn't get stuck in them, right?
Right. And it probably really helps when it's time to have those difficult conversations in the workplace, especially for leaders that are faced with that. And we never know how to approach it.
Yeah. Well, and we're again, it's like we approach it more with strategy.
Right.
We don't approach it because it's so much easier. It's so much less vulnerable to prep ahead of time or to get really humbled by like, oh, I guess looking at their side would be, oh, I did contribute to the situation this way. That's where when we meet one-on-one or when we meet even in small groups, that admittance, that safety is so important to be able to courageously be honest. Like one of the three core values, that so to speak, one of them is courageous truth. It takes a lot of courage to be honest. It takes a lot of courage to not BS yourself.
Oh, no kidding.
So when we tap into that, there is a relief and there's a sense of the one word, which is so, I've never would have thought this, that so many clients use, especially around difficult conversations, is I cannot believe how excited I am to have this conversation.
Wow. How
Isn't that
freeing
crazy?
is that?
It's so cool. Yeah.
Because everything about having that difficult conversation is going to be better on the other end. We all know that when we've gone through them. So how freeing is that? That's great.
And the one thing I do want to add there is it may not be better on the other end. You'll feel better. You will feel more whole. So the expectations, the reaction of the other person, you still don't know what those are. I don't have like a magic wand that I say, this is how you can manipulate or figure them out. It's that you go in so much more mentally reframed of how you're looking at the conversation, and you feel it in your mind, you feel it in your body, you feel it in your soul. So when you go in, no matter what the outcome is, you leave feeling so proud of yourself.
Wow. That's really powerful. And the work that you're doing is so needed with all leadership, whether you're leading one person or leading many. I've heard you speak a lot about what you call the Personification Posse to kind of help us navigate through this energy and these emotions. Can you take us through the 4 personifications and just kind of give us an overview of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Personification Posse came from, just quick background. When I was in college, I went to Ithaca College, and back in the day, like 25 years ago, I was in a theater class and I was given the opportunity to write a play. So I wrote, and I don't know where it came from. To this day, I feel like the whole thing was channeled through me. I named it Me, Myself, and I. And it was about a young girl named Meg. And Meg, it opens up with her on her bed. She was stood up for like a winter formal. And one by one, these characters come on the stage. And one you think is her little sister. One you think is her mother. One you think is her grandmother. One you think is like her very studious other sister. And then like this 20-year-old kind of saucy, sexy number walks in. What you end up finding out by her having these conversations and scenes with them is that they're all part of Meg. And so it goes through Meg's rites of passage all the way up till she gives birth. And that always stayed with me. And I always thought, that's so true. Like we do have all of these parts. And it reminded me of a quote I heard a long time ago, that in every truck driver, there's a librarian, and in every librarian, there's a truck driver. Isn't that great?
That's a great quote.
Next time you go to the library, you're going to bust out laughing, and then I'm so sorry. But anyway, so that's always stayed with me. And then when I started doing this work, I said, it makes a lot of sense to acknowledge the voices in our head that are really there, and they're characters, and we call them archetypes, so to speak. And one of the reasons it really popped up is because something I kept hearing from clients was to stay with difficult conversations. A leader would go into a room terrified of having the conversation, and they would avoid it. Mm-hmm. And so they would come to me and they would say, oh my God, I was so nervous. I went in the room and I don't even know why I'm nervous. It's my direct report, or I don't even know why I'm nervous. I love this client, or whatever it is. And then they would say, and then I left and I was like, you did it again. Like you totally avoided it. Why did you do that? And I said, okay, let's pause here. You realize those are 2 different parts of yourself. There's a part of yourself that's really scared. And then there's a part of you that's totally judging you for not having the conversation. They're not the same parts of you. They probably don't even feel the same in your body. And everyone, of course, yeah, okay. And so it just brought back Me, Myself, and I. And so the archetypes, and it branches off a bit, but these are the core that every human being has. And I've added a 5th too, just to bring it all home, is the worrier. Enough said with the worrier, but the worrier, and it can show up in many different ways. It's oftentimes a much younger version of us, but some people have it as like red bubbles in their body or something like that too. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a person or an animal. And the warrior is also the what if energy. What if, what if, what if, what if?
Which we
And
all spend so much time
we all
doing.
spend so much time.
Yes.
What if I get behind the camera and I go on and then so-and-so sees it? And everybody's worried about the person from high school. So let's just get that out there now. Like it doesn't matter how old you are. It's normal. It's very nerve-wracking. Your audience they're all like so courageous in having small businesses and putting themselves out there. That in of itself is courageous. And then we have all the what ifs on top of that. So it's totally normal. I have an exercise for that we can circle back to. The second is the whipper. That's the whipper. The whipper is the whipper. The judger internally and externally with the whip. The warrior is the doer upholding. I can make it happen. Oftentimes the rescuer. I got it. I can handle it.
The fixer. We always have the fixers. Yeah.
The fixer. And there's advantages and disadvantages to all of them. We all have them for a reason. Then there's the wizard. The wizard is the the wizard to the what if of the warrior is what if the words are the same, the energy is different. So anyone listening who's like, I don't really grasp the energetic component or I want to understand it more, all you have to do is get yourself in the worrying mindset and start going, what if, and name all the things that you're scared about that are going to happen or not happen. Then take a breath or go for a walk and then daydream for a minute on something in your business or in your life that you would love to see come to fruition and say the same words, but just now you're in the wizard mindset of, what if I did get that client? What if that person did show up and walk in the store? What if I did have this, LinkedIn post that went out and all of a sudden I got all this business that came in? What if that did? What if, what if, what if? It's the same words, it's different energy. And then the fifth is the wise one. The wise one is intuition. The wise one is the grounded trust. It's that knowing underneath the warrior. And they're all five there. So we go through very in-depth workbook. Clients go through a quiz. We incorporate it into any of the programs that we work through together because it really is that powerful.
So we all have all five of these in us. And when you kind of teach us how to, I guess, label them in a way, and then tools how to kind of pivot that, like your scenario of the what ifs, you're right. The what ifs can be negative, and a lot of times we can get caught in that hamster of just constantly worrying. But if we position them as a what if wizard, what if all of a sudden our business is really successful? What if I do build something I can sell in 10 years? So is that kind of the purpose of labeling them for us and helping us get unstuck? Do you find that?
I do. I feel like that's one part of it. So because if people lean into the wizard, what with the what ifs that you just explained and use as examples, and they're not used to being in that space, they can easily go back to the warrior because it becomes so addicting to worry, and our brains are wired to look for the threat. Mm-hmm. So we feel safer when we're in worry. We feel like and not even on a very lighter level, like we feel like we're going to be in control. We feel like we're going to be able to handle things. If I stay hyper vigilant, and it's not even like we mentally really are thinking this, it's so subconscious, but if I stay hyper vigilant, everything's going to be okay, right? Like how many of us had worried so much, like when our kids aren't home, if I worry enough, it's going to make it so they get home safely.
Right.
But if I don't worry, oh my God, then it just everything's going to collapse, and God forbid what's going to happen. And so we have to also learn how to make space to safely hold joy. And we don't often talk about that, and how to hold happiness, and not with grips and white knuckles, but just to allow ourselves to energetically feel what it feels like to feel joy more so than not, so that we actually can start calling it in and building from that place versus creating our businesses from this sense of fear. So you nailed something, Jen, when you were saying about labeling them. All of this is based in neuroscience. It's all with a creative spin. So I always bring science and creativity. We always say strategy and soul are a huge part of So to Speak. And we want them together because one without the other is not whole. because we're whole humans. So when you talk about labeling, that's a huge part of neuroscience and emotional intelligence. Dr. Dan Siegel has coined a very popular phrase called name it to tame it. So when you name what you're feeling, and in fact, when you say, I'm feeling some anxiety pop up versus I'm so anxious, even doing that, like if you are starting out and you're saying, I am so anxious, and you're starting to start label, great. One step even more beneficial to your system is to not attach yourself to I am anxious, but to say, oh, I'm feeling anxiety. Right away, it's going to create objectivity. You're going to start noticing, embodying it, and just noticing where it's hitting you. And it has been proven to instantly decrease your emotional dysregulation by naming it, because then it gives our brain something to label, which we like to do. It gives us more certainty versus how am I feeling? I'm overwhelmed. I'm feeling, even if you feel deep embarrassment or humiliation, your body knows if you're lying. So if you, thought you were going to just knock a sales pitch out of the park and you did not, or you felt that you didn't, just by saying, I feel humiliation. I even feel shame coming on right now. Okay, I'm going to hold space for this part of me this is so the worrier. Oh, and I love you so much. And the whipper is sitting there going, if you just did what I said, and you're like, go to the mall, go to the beach, give it a name, tell it to sit down. And I always say, put your worrier on your lap, bring your inner child to work day. And just invisibly put it on your lap, like you're safe. You're going to watch me. It's like you're mothering it. Like you're going to watch me have this wonderful conversation with my friend Jen. Isn't she so pretty in her pink? See, like I really do and it just calms that part of me. And now I can fully be present with you to come full circle to what we talked about at the beginning. Because when we push that part of us away out of embarrassment, or we're this far along as leaders or as business owners, we should be showing up this way. We are so shaming that we would never do that to a little 5-year-old.
So true. We're so hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
So hard on ourselves. And I love how you talked about finding joy, because so many business owners put so much pressure on themselves. They're always looking forward. They're always striving for the next metric. They're always looking ahead and don't sit in the present. Don't look backwards very often. And pat themselves on the back for what they've built. Like you said, it takes courage to step out and be an entrepreneur, to leave that job and that boss that you loved. That takes a lot of grit, a lot of courage. Mm-hmm. And sometimes our wins aren't numbers. Our wins are the impact we're having on somebody, or even just a little how we grew ourselves personally. And we fail to spend enough time celebrating ourselves. So thank you so much for kind of sharing your unique, I know there's a lot to it. So who's an ideal client for you, and how long do you typically work with them? Because like you said, these are some things that they're patterns, they're habits. They've been ingrained in us for decades. Mm-hmm. And in order to step up and be the best leader, how long does it typically take, and who's a good fit for you? Like what part of their leadership journey?
Yeah. So it's not a one size fits all. So some people, depending on whatever work they've done before. So it's also not a race. So time wise, I like to say 3 months is a great start. 6 months is a deep dive. If you then want to continue on, great. But that usually, no matter if you're brand new to anything that you and I have been talking about, that's usually a good start. So when I say 3 to 6 months, it's 3 months if you have done a bit of personal or professional development work and you've kind of already scraped under the hood, great. 6 months and you're brand spanking new, come in. If you have scraped under the hood and you're looking for just a refresher, 6 months is great too, because our programs are very comprehensive. They're in depth. You get them forever. You get one-on-one with me or small cohort if that's what you choose. And then who we love to work with are people who are human-centered, high-achieving leaders. The leaders who are no nonsense, the leaders who are like, I want to get it done. And at the same time, they're like, there's a little voice that's saying, I've hit all the metrics, I'm doing all the things, and yet there's something inside of me that is not feeling fulfilled. what is it? Why is that happening? And they hear it and they know that's happening. And I need something more. And the outside is saying, I'm so tired of this. I'm getting so exhausted. Or is saying, I am exhausted to always feel like I'm never doing enough. Like, when will I know that? The leaders who are in organizations, who are management position or up, entrepreneurs, small business owners, the overarch is that the majority of the clients that come to us are stepping into some version of greater visibility, and they're feeling excited. And at the same time, am I good? Like, a lot of imposter syndrome starts popping up. So we allow them space so that they can really tap into transforming and uncovering. We always say uncovering that voice that's in them, that steady, that true, that authentic voice.
Well, you and I worked with each other.
We
And
did.
I came to you when I wanted to get out and start speaking about my story of entrepreneurship. And I was in a place of complete imposter syndrome. Like, why would somebody care about my journey from corporate life to entrepreneurship to what I've built today? And it's very vulnerable to get out there and speak about your story. And your process was very enlightening. I learned a ton. I was able to tap into some of these different, warriors and all the different, posses. And has stuck with me. And I've been out there, testing, speaking a little bit. I haven't done a ton of it, but it was tremendous help for me. So I really appreciate your approach and how different it is. It's not this practical, here you need, step 1, step 2, step 3, even though you helped me craft my speech too, but you really did it in a way that felt very comfortable to me and helped me show up more confidently.
Well, I love that. And I remember the main thing there, Jen, was that it was you hit an authentic spot. Like, at first it was very, there was a lot of friction, and there was a point, and I remember exactly where I was sitting, where you said, okay, now it's getting fun.
Yeah, you get out of your own way. Like, we just get in our own way so often.
Yeah.
And we just think all the what ifs, what are people going to think of me? Who am I to get out there and
Who am I is the
speak
biggest one.
this?
Who am
All
I
of
is the
those negative that keeps us stuck. And, like you said, our visibility, when we scale businesses, we have to step into the next level, whether it's working with a bigger client or walking into a room of different entrepreneurs or different, people in corporate, and that our brains are wired to keep us stuck. So it's so great that we have tools out there when we learn how to use them to help us get through that.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say as we close is that when I think of Present with Presence, which is the program that Jen's speaking about, I recently gave a keynote, and there were a few hundred people there. And I had been giving keynotes for years, and I left and I had a panic attack. And what I realized happened was that I did not put into practice as much of my energetic tools to preserve my energy that I usually would have. So I had tools that I practiced after the fact. So I just want to say it's normal for this to happen no matter how long you've been speaking or not speaking. And that's one of the biggest pieces that we really work on, how to preserve your energy. If you feel like you're empathic and you're a sponge and how can you preserve your energy so that you don't take on other people's energy is a big piece so that you can speak wholly and authentically. And the last plug I'll say is that we did work together, and I worked with you, and I'll tell you, it's so funny. We both were on the flip side where I finally was looking at numbers like, oh, this is fun. I didn't know this could. You brought it together in such a clear and very beautifully simplistic way to look at numbers, where I felt so much more, I will even say I felt more adult and mature about numbers. I felt so much more like, oh, they do not have, I was so intimidated by them.
Sure. And which is very normal because
Yeah.
you're a creative energy,
Mhm.
and it's very normal to avoid the numbers or, obsess over them either way. But yeah, you were in a position of kind of avoiding them, which is okay. But I loved how we were able to really hone in on your profit margin, making sure you were priced correctly.
Mhm.
And I loved it when you messaged me and said, hey, this is kind of fun looking at numbers. It can be.
So I thank you so much for that. That was a huge help.
Well, thank you too for the work that you helped me with. So, Kristy, thank you for coming on today. This is really interesting. It's insightful. I feel like we're just scratching the surface. So how can people find out more about what you do and how they can tap into your programs?
So the So to Speak podcast is a podcast that I produce and host. It's free. It's geared towards leaders in organizations as well as leaders who are entrepreneurs and founders. And it focuses on communication tips, emotional intelligence, personal development in ways that you can really tap into, again, transforming so that you can stay in your authentic voice. That's one. So I think you're going to put the link to that in the show notes. And then the second is the second way is that the second Tuesday of every month, we run a free 90-minute masterclass called From Self-Doubt to Self-Trust, Uncover the 3 communication secrets that every inspiring leader knows.
Oh my gosh, sign up for that. Everybody needs to sign up for that. What a great program. Awesome. Well, I will definitely put the links in the show notes. Thank you again for sharing your wisdom and being on the show today.
Thanks so much, Jen. It was such a blast.
Leadership isn't always about being perfect or always knowing the right thing to say. It's about being present. It's about trusting your voice, your intuition, and your ability to show up with clarity and courage, even when it gets uncomfortable. As Kristy shared, your inner wisdom is always available if you're willing to listen. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to check the show notes for links to Kristy's free resources and her podcast, and I'll see you next time on Main Street Success Stories. If you're a small business owner and your business is not giving you all that you desire, I invite you to learn more about my Earn More, Stress Less program. I work with creative entrepreneurs who want to pay themselves regularly, who want more profits, who want to scale. There's lots of different ways to get plugged into my program, and you'll see those in the show notes below. Until next time, please share this episode with somebody who's an emerging leader, someone who's managing people, or is just trying to grow their business. This could make all the difference that they need in their world today. Thanks for listening.